Hail Varsity Radio Saturday morning show, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Strap yourselves in. Here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt.
Y'all don't even know he was a virgin until he's 28, and now, roll tide.
And Mark Cranack.
Time has come for someone to put his foot down. And that foot is me.
Welcome to it, weekend editions here at Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Busy week. We'll put a bow on it for you. Chris Schmidt, Damon, Barr. And give us a follow on Twitter at Schmidt_radio, at Damon Barr. That's 2 R's. Mark Cranack is on assignment. We've been playing that game for almost 15 years on the weekend edition. If one of us is out, usually involving our kids, we are on assignment. What does that mean? He is gathering info and intel for a killer next Saturday when my favorite's back. So Cranack on assignment, but the next couple of hours we'll dive in and go full Big Red. Numbers to dial up, 466-3776, 466-3776, 800-825-5865. So we'll dive into some Husker baseball. Big time win for Coach Bolt's crew last night. We'll hear from Will Bolt in a little bit. Dive into some Nebraska spring football thoughts. Brandon Vogel 1 hour from now. And the Iron Horse, Gary Sharp, also joins us in the 8 o'clock hour. A couple of great rewinds for you. Fun week of guests this week on Hail Varsity Radio. That included Rick Pizzo from the Big Ten Network. Get his take on Nebraska football as he sees things this spring and moving forward from a national and Big Ten perspective. Some good insight on year 4 for Adrian Martinez. And then the Pride of Grand Island, Matt Vrzal, going to be with us as Verz, standout Husker in the 90s. We'll talk with Verz. We'll hear that conversation and get Verz's take on the O-line and in the running game. Can email chris@hailvarsity.com. So just some takeaways this week from spring football. And the no panic, don't drink the Kool-Aid take is still weighing heavy. It was pretty funny with just the amazing job Nebraska's video and social media department did. Midweek, what was the talk? What was the discussion? It was, well, there was no Omar Manning scene. He was in sweats. Sky's falling. There's no Marquise Stepp, and that is still a bit of a concern to me. Now, people smarter than I are like, nope, Stepp will be fine. He'll get back by summertime, and he'll be able to do some work for the Big Red carrying the football this fall. But plenty of fun had with lots of Omar sightings with the Nebraska Kool-Aid video. So that was good news for Nebraska fans towards the end of the week. But things got kicked off with Adrian Martinez and kind of his take on things, and also a chance to hear from Mario Verduzco. And, one of the more kind of poignant moments this week was the topic of benching, right? And the fact that Super Mario was pretty real with just what went down, as much as he could divulge or wanted to divulge, between the situation last year where Adrian was your starter, had the job, wasn't playing great, got pulled. And then here's Luke McCaffrey. A couple of things that stick out here. Mario's like, look, man, I'm not the boss. I'm the position coach. So that wasn't my call. Okay, boom. And that told me a little bit. And you didn't really ever hear Mario say, he needed it. Now, he did kind of go into, he had a chance to sit, look, and then he responded the right way. And just the way Verduzco kind of choked up a little bit with it this week, it really kind of shows the care. It's not just lip service, but the care he has for the kids in that quarterback room. And the other thing that you got to have on a football team or any team, honestly, is you got to have dudes that can respond the right way to adversity. Lord knows there's been lots of adversity on the field for Nebraska football because of the win totals. There's been so many close ball games. They've been right there, and something's gone wrong. They have seemed cursed, quite frankly. And what you do have is a guy in Adrian Martinez that responded the right way. And it was highlighted against Penn State. Luke got his first start. Adrian was supportive, and Adrian stayed ready. That is so vital moving forward as he goes into his fourth season, right? There's not anything he hasn't seen. There's not much he hasn't experienced. He's been benched in college. He's been injured in college. He's lost heartbreakers in college. He's had some great games in college. He's seen it all. It's time to kind of put it all together, and he knows that, and I'm excited for this season with him with some help around him. And I think they've done a good job of adding that talent around him, but it's time for that talent around him to perform, and he's got to be better too, and he knows that. But the Verduzco-Adrian dynamic was pretty interesting this week. So that's one takeaway. You know, with Nebraska and their running game, as much as we talk about the backs, it's the comfort you have with three guys in that snapshot of the Rutgers game. The Rutgers game that you saw three redshirt freshmen on the offensive line and a sophomore in Cam Jurgens, or he still might be a freshman. Forgive me about 7 a.m. math here. But yet four dudes that have started and done pretty well, at least to end the season. And then the final point here on the week that was with spring football was just the reality that Markel Dismuke and Deontay Williams provided, how they were upset, frustrated. They've moved on. There's no grudges. But just the I don't want to go and say divide, but it wasn't uniform about the bowl game, where you had some that didn't want to play, some that did. Why are we rehashing it? Well, Deontay Williams was asked about it really for the first time. You got to hear a player's perspective from a dude who wanted to play, didn't get to. He wanted some more film for the NFL. He wanted to go out potentially with a bowl win for Nebraska, and the vote didn't go the way that he needed it to go. And that's still shocking that a college football team voted not to play in the bowl game, and let's go home to our family. Yes, absolutely trying year with COVID. Yes, difficult situation to not see family because of protocol. Family is most important. I get it. I totally get it. But some insight there. Husker Baseball did their thing last night, 6-2. 9 out of 10 for this Husker Baseball squad, 14-5 overall. As they did some work, Joe Acker, 3 for 5, 3 doubles for him. You have Bryce Matthews in the bottom of the order going 2 for 4, and he went yard. A couple of stolen bases, couple of RBI. Spencer Schwellenbach paced the crew as well with a couple of hits and 3 RBI. And it's a 3-double game by Acker. This team's doing it and finding ways. And it was a little tight in the mid-innings, and then Nebraska finally got over the hump and pushed forward. Cade Povich, 6 in the third inning, improves to 3-1. The relief came in, and the bullpen threw 2 2/3 shutout innings to get this series opening win. You know, Sean Burke is a guy that can throw some flames for Maryland. 9 strikeouts a game for him. He had 6, so Nebraska a little bit better at the dish than the average against a guy like Burke. But what happened is this. Nebraska got out 1-0. Maryland tied the game. And the key inning or half inning in this ball game was the top of the 4th. Maryland led off with a hit, and then Povich got a couple of outs. You had a runner on first with 2 down, and then you had a bit of a 2-out rally here, a double by Maryland, and then you had an intentional walk to Maryland's bopper, Cowles. So you had the bases loaded, and you had a run walked in by Povich. but then you were able to get a fourth strikeout by Povich to get out of that bases-loaded jam. Yes, you walked in a run. Yes, there was some two-out hits, but one run was it. Not, all right, they take care of business and bring home the empty the bases, so to speak, which could have been detrimental. So let's hear from Will Bolt in the post game here. Again, Will Bolt's all about the details and small things leading to big things here. Here's Nebraska's skipper.
Yeah, it's funny you ask. That was one of the things we talked about before the game, a Friday night game, going up against a premium arm like that. Those are the type of things that you got to get done. I mean, you got to get it done on every day. But yeah, a night like tonight, awful lot of big plays on our end that weren't necessarily the big swings, but just a lot of the plays that don't necessarily show up in the box score. Laying down bunt base hits. It started in the first inning, the 2-strike double, and then the 11 pitch at bat there from Hallmark. I mean, absolutely set the tone for the game. Moving the runner over, and then Schwelly putting the ball in play with 2 strikes. And there was, one of the things I told the team after the game was it would have very easily could have been one of those days where you look up and go, man, we were so close. Bryce Matthews just missed hitting 2 3-run home runs in the first 4 innings of the game. But if you're not able to or not willing to sacrifice for your team and just do the small things like we did in that 5th inning there, you don't probably win that game. So that's where it shows up. I mean, it shoulda, coulda, woulda. The wind's blowing in, wind knocked it down. It's okay. We'll find some other ways to get it done.
So that was Will Bolt in the post game, and he talked about the 5th. You had 3 runs, 2 hits, and an error. And the little thing here, your 9-hole hitter worked the leadoff walk. You get an Acker double. You get a second hit. And you got 2 guys in scoring position. And then Schwellenbach again coming up to do his work. More from Will Bolt as he recaps the win last night. In Nebraska, and we talk about this with football, right? You want to see it from the practice field to Saturday afternoon. Well, you saw things in action, and you've seen a lot of it this season with Nebraska's start and consistency right now in Big Ten play, and that's the work in practice showing up on game day.
Well, it's a little bit of both. I mean, we like to give the guys the freedom to play the game and to we talk the situations and we talk about it in practice, and there's things that we work on. They work on within their skill set in the cages when nobody's watching. So some of it, Coach Harvell continues to do a great job with just getting the guys ready to go offensively and finding a way to get them around the bases. And our guys continue to do a great job of just finding a way to get it done. So, again, we just got to keep it going.
More on the execution and the attitude of the team.
Well, we have a saying around here. It's execution's all about attitude, and you got to have attitude to do it, and you've got to have the attitude of I'm eager to get it done. Not that I'll try it if it comes up, or maybe I'll give it a shot, or just kind of just go through the motions with it. You got to have the attitude to do it, and in order to execute at a high level, that's what you got to have. And up to this point, the 9 guys that we put in the lineup, and then guys that we bring off the bench, and guys every day at practice, they're willing to do and eager to do what it takes to get the job done.
More from Will Bolt here, and let's talk about Povich again on the mound. His performance, good enough for the win. He has been so nice for Nebraska to have a Bellevue kid that was going to end up at A&M. You get the coaching change, and you get this commitment, and it's turned into a really nice luxury for Nebraska to have a dude like Povich on the hill.
Set the tone nicely for us. Had the changeup going again. I mean, back to a 4-pitch mix. I think last week it was more 1.5 pitches, and he just competed his way through it. Today he had 4 pitches going against a really good hitting team, a team that's been swinging the bats really well. Obviously a huge moment in that game in the middle innings where he's able to get us off the field with just the one run there, leave the bases loaded. gave us a shot to come back with the 3 spot. I mean, that was obviously really huge, and that's what you got to have. You got to have your Friday night guy make those pitches in those big spots, save the bullpen a little bit, and give your offense a chance to get rolling.
So you got pitching, you got 2 strike hitting, and Nebraska did the work on the diamond. They scored the runs. They got the 11 pitch at bat. They got the runner moved over. They made the 2 strike hit happen. Maryland, 1 run, bases left loaded. More about the confidence in the lineup.
I think so. I mean, I think we've settled in and had a nice stretch here where we're able to score some runs and put together some big innings and consistent scoring with those top 6 in the order. And then, that, like you said, depending on who's catching that day, maybe some matchups left, right at the plate or on the mound. I'm sorry. Maybe can determine some of the other spots in the lineup. But again, a guy like Roscom stepping in and playing first base at a pretty high level. I mean, incredible plays there by him defensively, drew 3 walks. I mean, again, those guys are just finding a way to get the job done even when they're not necessarily getting a lot of hits.
Last side here from Will Bolt, and again, Matt Vrzal and Rick Pizzo this hour on Hail Varsity Weekend Edition. The thing that's been so good about this Nebraska baseball team is their personalities a lot like Will Bolt's, and that's commitment here to the approach, how to go get it done. Yeah,
I think you just always have to evolve and adapt as a hitter. You get the more information gets out there. But again, I think at the end of the day, it always just revolves back to doing what you do best and just sticking with that and just being that guy and trusting that that's going to be good enough. And they may get you sometimes, but if you're committed enough to what you do and your approach and your at-bats, then, you got a shot when you got some talent. And that's what you're seeing with those freshmen. Just stick with their approach, keep coming, and you've seen it up and down the lineup as well.
Game 2 this afternoon, Huskers and Terps. Nebraska looks to add to their lead here in Big Ten baseball. And what a start here. Let's dive into some spring football. That's on the way. Weekend edition at Hail Varsity Radio. Rick Pizzo, Big Ten Network, and we'll get things kicked off. The Rewind next with Matt Vrzal at Hail Varsity Radio. A weekend edition presented by the Nebraska Lottery.
Back with Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery, with Chris Schmidt and Mark Cranack.
Getting rolling hour 2 at Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Standout Husker and pizza maker extraordinaire with Paisans. We say hi to Matt Vrzal. Verz, I love talking football with you. This may go in the wrong direction, but my little boy's playing your nephew this weekend in baseball, and I always love seeing your family, and I just hope they don't throw at my child. How are you?
Well, I'm good. No guarantees on anything. That's how close the game is. But they'll keep it shoulder down, so you don't have to worry about the noggin. But you might get a cheek in there if the game gets close.
There's plenty of cushion since he's a Schmidt right there. So, Verz, it's springtime, it's football, man, and I know you're busy, but I always love your take on things. And where are you at from an optimism level? Feeling pretty good about where things are at, or is there just some caution with the optimism?
Schmidt, I've said over, I don't have any issue with anything they do. Mm-hmm. The talent level, I think, is there. The scheme is there. It's just now, for whatever reason, none of it seems to meet on Saturday.
Right.
And, there's a camp of people that will say, well, look at how close it was last year, and you lost by 7, and you lost by 6, and you lost by 7, and Illinois is really the only team that blew you out. And I'm, in my mind, in Ohio State, of course, mm-hmm. I said, but in my mind, I'm like, those things all still happen. Like, I'm not a moral victory kind of guy. That's the beauty of competition in athletics, is we get to go out in college football once a weekend, and we get to figure out who's better. And Nebraska, unfortunately, last year was only better 3 times, and everybody else was better 5 times. So for me, fixing the little things that can win you games. I had a great conversation with a former teammate of mine, and he said, well, if you move from number 274, where you're at in special teams, even to halfway of that, you win 2 or 3 of those games. And I said, yeah. I said, you could be correct in that. I said, but there were some other things that, if my aunt had gonads, she'd be my uncle. But it's one of those things that these are, you're in year 4. Like, those should be under control by now. And those should be a focus. So I'm really hoping that attention to the little, we don't have to talk about it anymore. No more special teams. Oh my God, we have to go on special teams. Or, oh my God, they jumped offside again. Or, oh my God, we did this. Or, oh my God, we threw a lateral pass. Like, those things, we can eliminate that. Then I think they're really on a good trajectory. But your schedule now becomes more daunting. So they better be ready to roll right out of the gate, have all of the little things buttoned up, and now we can get a true gauge of what's happening.
Matt Vrzal's with us, Hail Varsity Radio, and Verz51 on Twitter. No, that's a healthy look, and you're right, it is year 4, and I think there's a lot of talent on that roster. Verz, there was some discouraging news with Stepp and his injury situation yesterday. And he's a guy that, man, when he's healthy, he did some really good things at a high-level program. You've got a bunch of scholarship backs there, and you got a new kid, too, in Irvin that sounds great. But, what is it about Nebraska's running back situation that they've just kind of been searching since Ozigbo, and it's been a long time since there's been a guy like Amir down there. It shouldn't be an issue to have a great guy carrying the rock at Nebraska, and I'm not saying they don't have one. But it's taken a while for a guy to get lathered up and be kind of the mail carrier here. Do you think you can find one here between now and fall, or find a couple?
Well, Smitty, for me, the thing that my questions with that are, Ronald Tompkins, Ramir Johnson, Scott. When the recruiting process will happen, these guys were the next coming of Kenny Clark. We had the next coming of all these great running backs. And again, you're year 2 with some of these guys, you're year 3 with some of these guys. Why are you dependent on a transfer in who then ends up being hurt? And injuries happen. That's unfortunate for the young man. I feel terrible for him. But how do you get to that position? Like, that's another thing I would evaluate and say, how are we here with this? How is this what has happened? Are we missing on recruits? Or do they need more time to develop? Because, listen, I've seen the film on the kids, and I think the kids can play. But the rotations of it, to me, at times seem super choppy. Like, to get lathered up, you have to be in motion. Like, you have to be playing for more than a snap or two, or for more than a play or two. And that's not I'm not taking shots at Coach Held or anybody, but this is just something that they should be good. Like, we shouldn't have to be discussing these things. Like, I think there is talent in the running back room. Now it's the coaching staff's methodology to find a way to creatively use that talent, right? And those schemes that they have contain those things. Nobody can explain to me how this hasn't all meshed up. Because, hey, I'm Team Ramir, right? Oops, sorry. I'm Team Ramir. Like, I like what he has to offer. I would love to see him get 3 series in a row where he can go out and play. So that's something I hope they can clear up as well.
Few minutes here. We're talking spring football, Husker football. Matt Vrzal with us, former Husker standout with us, Hail Varsity Radio at Verz51 on Twitter. Verz, look at the offensive line. They finished well against Rutgers. They're not super old, but they're not super new or young. And I know last time we talked about the center position, well. And we also talked about a kid real well in Hickson, and he's battling for a chance to start again. But as you kind of ballpark the offensive line, what gains do you expect this spring by that group, and where can they go? What type of O-line can Coach G have down there in Lincoln?
Well, I know it was a 1-game sample size, but if Corcoran plays like he did in that game, then I think you have a star in the making. I think you have a bell cow, as Bill used to say, for your offensive line. You have someone that can change the identity of the perception of your line, because he was nasty in that game. He was, if not the best, he was the second best lineman in that game. I mean, he played a game I never thought I would play, and then unfortunately, the way I am right now, it made me wonder why he hadn't been in earlier, because I'm guessing he didn't just turn that on and go for his first start. That's kind of how he is. Mm-hmm. The rest of the guys hopefully pick up on that. You know, I've grown to like Ethan Piper. I think an amazing, or not amazing, but a good athlete, somebody that can bring that athleticism back to Nebraska football, especially Nebraska's offensive line. You know, those guys have to be athletic. You just have to be 300 plus pounds as an athlete. So I think the attitude, right? They're going to be the tone setters for how that offense feels. I know it's 2 a.m.'s gig, and I know he runs the show, but those guys up front have to have a nasty disposition, and they want to hurt. You know, they have to want to hurt people, and it's okay. Because as long as you're doing it and nobody flags it, it was all legal. That's the beauty of what we get to do. So we can go in and we can throw hands, and we can tell each other what we think of each other, and we can hurt. That's okay. So I hope they have just a nasty mentality. That's what I'll be looking for early in the season is are you just a bunch of fresh pricks that really don't care what anybody thinks of you, and you just go do your job and do it well and do it mean.
Do you have to get a little nasty in kids today? I mean, I look at my own boy, and he didn't get a play on the line. I don't know if he'll play at all, but my point is he seems like, you know, he's got a little a-hole in him. I don't know where he gets that. But just from the coaching perspective, are kids more timid, or are there some kids with a mean streak? I know it varies, but what's your experience been like?
No, it's in them.
Okay.
It's just not in as many.
Nice. Okay.
The kids that are that way, 9 times out of 10 have had a little bit rougher go of it.
Sure.
And then some, it's just in you. Like you're just like my nephew, the one you were speaking of, Cash. Mm-hmm. He will instigate, and he'll answer the bell. You can ask his brother Max, like, Cash, if he goes down, he doesn't back down from it. He's ready to roll. So, yeah, it's in some kids. You can pull it out of some of them. And everybody's got a trigger. You know, there were things that you would just think about and piss you off, and then you're like, all right, it was that person across the line from me's fault. He did it. That's why. So I'm not taking it out on you. You don't want me to, but I'm going to take it out on you because you did this. You made this bad situation happen in my life, and it's your fault.
You can channel it, and it's all about getting that button pushed. Matt Vrzal's with us, Varsity Radio. Verz, you mentioned Adrian, and what do you put on Adrian? What do you take away from Adrian? I look at his career as we go into year 4. Freshman year, had a lot of help around him, but man, was he good, and man, was he healthy. And then you got the expectations in year 2. You got a little bit of the quarterback merry-go-round and looking over your shoulder year 3, and now we're back to year 4, into year 4, back to the opportunity to be and kind of build off of what you looked like your first year. So it's been a long, strange trip, and I think he's super talented. I don't think he's had a ton of help around him, or it's not all kind of been on the level playing field since his freshman year with either the receiving core or a guy like Ozigbo to lean on with the run game. Turnovers are key. You need to hold on to the football even if you're going to run. I get all that. But as you look at Adrian here, man, what's his upside? What do you think, what can be this end of the chapter for him as he goes into this senior season?
Hopefully we get back to the A-mark with a little swag, right?
Sure.
You probably hit on a lot of the points. I think your biggest one was at the end. I don't think Coach Austin, Coach Frost, anybody up there would have said, hey, you know, our offensive line really did him a solid. Like, they really got him in a position where he could showcase his talent, which is the offensive line's job. And that's not a dig on anybody. That's fact. If you watch the games, it's very hard to run a timing offense, and I'm not beating a dead horse here, when your snap is off. Mm-hmm. It's very hard to complete passes when a member of your protection unit has whiffed on a block and there's a guy, as you catch the ball, that is literally a yard and a half from you. Those reads come fast. Adrian has also contributed to some of those things by forcing balls into areas they don't need to go to, fumbling. So for me, it's, again, control what you can control, right? So if I'm going to run the ball, I'm going to protect the ball. If I'm going to distribute the ball, I'm not going to force it into an area where I don't want it, where I don't have to put it. When I do, pitch, handoff, whatever, those things are as secure as the Deutsche Bank. Everything is on lockdown. Like, eliminating those then also factors into what we talked about at special teams at the beginning of the call is getting another win or two. Right? Don't be your own worst enemy. You've got enough of that stuff that can happen. So if you can control those turnovers, control the correct read, control, empower your offensive line. Say, hey, fellas, that one wasn't very good, but I know you got the next one. And then you go from there, and then it builds, and then you see the confidence, right? The confidence boost of executing the game plan, that's really all that's missing. It's just a good, fluid, hey, we executed great here. Now we can just go be the athletes that we were recruited to be and have success. So those are the things that I'm hoping to see out of Adrian. I think he's a great kid. I think he's been run through the ringer. I think he's been trotted out there a couple times in a situation where it wasn't the best around it, but he made or attempted to make the best out of it. Now it's time for him to have a squad around him. And I know they've lost some valuable pieces, but we should be able to step those in. Start by controlling the line of scrimmage and establishing your running game, be that with the running back, with the quarterback, with whomever. But let those big nasties up front get frothed up. Let them get lathered up and going. And then I think the play calling becomes a little bit more, not easy, but a little bit more reliable, I would say, because now we've got control of the line of scrimmage. So if they can control that, then I think they're going to shock some people. If they struggle up front, it's going to be difficult.
Matt Vrzal with us, Hail Varsity Radio at Verz51. Verz, we'll let you get to it. Know you're busy with Pisons. And do you have a run line number here for the A's versus Sox Sunday?
Well, from what I've heard, the Sox pitching hasn't been very good. So I'd probably throw that thing at about, I'd probably put it out around 14.
Okay, all right.
14 or 15.
And this is Junior's, the Lincoln A's first game of the year. I know the Sox have had a few ball games under their belt, so a little rough.
Oh, well, that would have been valuable information before I set the line. I'm saying the A's are probably just chomping at the bit to get out and hit some live pitching. So yes, I'll leave it at 14.
Okay. Well, hope to bump into you and crack one with you soon, bud. Thanks again.
Sounds all right, bud.
Early to rise with Hail Varsity Radio, the voice of Husker Nation. Here's Chris Schmidt and Mark Cranack.
We say hi to Rick Pizzo, Big Ten Buffet at BTN Rick Pizzo. On Twitter is where you find him. Rick, how's your Wednesday? What's good, man?
Wednesday is okay, Chris, but Monday and Tuesday were fantastic. Golf season has arrived in Chicago. It was 70 and sunny the last couple of days. Had a little bit of a breather, and I know we're here to talk about work stuff, but, man, to be able to get it on the links and start springtime in early April, what a bonus.
Man, you got game, though. You can swing the sticks. I know you're very humble, in all honesty, but, man, you're really good at it. So you always enjoy your golf rounds. I played Saturday. I got my lunch money taken, not literally, but just by the course. It just worked me, but again, we were out on the links before youth baseball started up, so yeah, it's always good. Golf season's here. We'll get to some Masters in a minute. I'm glad you got to go swing the clubs. Our focus has been spring football for Nebraska, and some discouraging news for Nebraska with Marquise Stepp, the transfer from SC. He has been lost for the spring. He had to have a procedure done on his foot. and he's a guy that Nebraska was hoping to lean on. Rick, as you look at Nebraska here in the Frost era, what's been your takeaway with the team's running game? What's a label or word that comes to mind with Nebraska's rushing attack?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of unknown because I think you're trying to figure out what do you want and what can you really expect from a run game in an offense which is going to be high tempo, high pace, put so much on the quarterback. And I think when folks look at either the run and shoot or the spread offenses, they immediately think of the quarterback and the wide receivers, and you kind of forget about the running backs. But you think about Ohio State, it's a perfect example, right? They ran that spread offense with Urban Meyer, and I know you relied so much on J.T. Barrett in critical down and distance situations, but think about the running backs that came through. I mean, without the play of guys like Carlos Hyde and Ezekiel Elliott and Trey Sermon going for, 500 yards combined in the championship game in the semifinal, that spread offense doesn't work. So I think, unfortunately, to too many people, it's an afterthought. Now, I don't think it's an afterthought to Scott. I certainly don't think that's the case. But you need to have a running back that can be a game breaker because then that completely opens things up for a guy like Adrian or any other quarterback who can take off when everything else is not there because that linebacker's eyes are staring into the backfield because the safety can't cheat. My dog clearly agrees with me if you can hear him barking outside. But that's the scenario that you have is a running back needs to be the setup guy in that offense. And from time to time, like Ohio State showed over the past decade, the running back needs to be the star as well. Are you just teasing Otto, talking football, as now we're into spring and we're so far away? Otto loves football. He is so mad that I'm as happy as I am that it's golf season. He is equally angry because that means that his guy, who's usually outside throwing the ball with him hours a day, the links hours a day, and he's kind of sitting there with the ball in his mouth with nobody to throw it to him, and clearly that's not nearly good. That's all right. No, it's good to get Otto on the show. As many years as we've done this, I mean, Otto's felt left out, so we're getting Otto some airtime on Hail Varsity. No, you're right, and Nebraska, they've had a feature back. I don't want to say that they haven't in the Frost era because Ozigbo really had a good finish to his career. And when Mills was healthy and they gave him the football, man, he did well against some pretty high-profile teams. But Nebraska right now is trying to find that next guy. And, Rick, as you look at some of the other programs, and you just hit on Ohio State, I mean, Iowa's had good run games. Michigan State, when they've been rolling, they've had a back. And I look kind of down the rest of Wisconsin, clearly. I mean, they always find a running back to lean on. Can you go as far as you want in the Big Ten with running back by committee? You can, but not at the schools that you mentioned. Now, you mentioned Iowa, Michigan State, Wisconsin, right? Mm-hmm. So when those schools were having great success, and Iowa, Wisconsin still now, they're not running the same kind of offense that Nebraska wants to run. So those schools, I don't think, could have quite as much success running back by committee. I mean, now, there are exceptions. I mean, when Wisconsin has, Monte Ball and James White and Melvin Gordon on the same team, as Nebraska fans know, and you run for 1 million yards in the championship game, then sure. Now, at Nebraska, I actually think it can work if you're able to have other guys that can do multiple things. And unfortunately, the departure of Wandale, I think that's a guy. You have that Percy Harvin mold, right? And I hate to, again, I'm hearkening back to an old Urban Meyer team, but that Florida team had some good running backs and really good quarterbacks, but they also had another guy that you could spread out and move. And I think that's what Scott really wants. Mm-hmm. He wants to have a couple of guys, a running back or two running backs by committee, but also have that kind of player, that flanker, wide receiver guy who you can put in the backfield, who you can put out wide, because that confuses defenses. It covers up a lot of mistakes. It covers up perhaps an inequity on the line. It covers up a quarterback that's not having a great day. I think that's really why that departure hurts so much, because it would allow a play caller like Scott to do so many different things if you have that in place for a couple of years and you're able to complement it with a running back, even by committee, if those guys aren't hurt.
Rick Pizzo's with us, Big Ten Buffet, Hail Varsity Radio, at BT and Rick Pizzo on Twitter. Rick, what's the jump you think you're going to see? And I know it's spring ball, but you're going to see from Adrian.
I think it has to be seismic, because I think we expected a jump after year one, and that was perhaps, maybe it was unfair, Chris, honestly. Mm-hmm. I think he was so good, and I think Scott put a lot of pressure on him, maybe too much, and I think we did too. Mm-hmm. And then I think then you get into a year where you're having competition, which I think is really good for quarterbacks. Now, I didn't necessarily love the way the competition was handled last year as far as this starts yours, we're going to go back and forth, and I understand there's always competition and there's always motivation in that, and Scott knows his players much better than I do. But now it's your team. Now, again, there are no questions. You are going to be the guy. You have guys around you now, and you have this system memorized. So I think you would agree with this, the problem last year was that inconsistency where you'd see one game and you'd say, he's got it. Mm-hmm. It's here. This is what we are going to see for the next year and a half. And the very next game, it disappears. Mm-hmm. And you're scratching your head saying, how can this be the same guy I saw at Purdue playing against Northwestern? They're two different guys. Mm-hmm. So I think that's what you need to see. You need to see the same guy week in and week out, and maybe not looking over the shoulder makes a difference this year.
I think you're right on with, freshman year, big wow, and then you've got expectations, and you feel those expectations, and Colorado derailed a lot. You go into next year, and it's really, quarterbacks are special, man, and they're special mentally in a good way because they run the show. But in the same way, confidence can be very, very fragile at that spot just because of...
Just like a hockey goalie.
Right.
Same thing.
Right, just because of how much you put into it. So, I look at Adrian's turnovers, and we've harped on that for forever. I just think it's apples and oranges. And I think they're trying to get back to the same level maybe they had around him his freshman year. I think the O-line can be good, but they don't have a running back like Ozigbo, and they don't have a guy like Stan or Spielman. Those are two wide receivers, and you still had Stoll playing for you. I just don't think he had the help last year, or guys weren't up to speed. So I think, he needed to be more consistent, but I think the offense around him didn't do him any favors.
No, I agree. And you had, multiple injuries to Wandale. And so many guys, right? So many important guys were hurt offensively, and you weren't sure what you were going to get every week. I think there were some questions, too. Like, listen, JD put up some great numbers, right? But I think there were some questions about the want-to factor every single Saturday. And I think that could bleed in as well. I think one thing that needs to be talked about this year, and I think Scott's probably tired of talking about it, but if you're the one that puts it out there, it deserves to be talked about. And he talked a lot publicly about getting the culture to where he wanted it to be, and that it would take 3 years, a full recruiting cycle, right, to get the guys out who didn't fit and let the guys that want to transfer go. That's this year, Chris. Mm-hmm. That's this year. Those guys who you didn't want, the culture killers, the guy who didn't understand what Nebraska football, those guys are gone. You have your guys now. So show us that this year, the culture that you knew, that you believed in, that created one of the greatest dynasties in college and has been gone basically for 2 decades, do we have those guys now? Are those the guys that are in Lincoln? I think we know a lot. I think we answer a lot of that question by the end of this year.
Rick, well, while we're talking just a little bit about Martinez and all that, where do you think Nebraska actually stands in terms of the talent of their starting quarterback in 2021? I mean, a lot of Husker fans had a lot of confidence in Adrian Martinez after that freshman season, as you said earlier. But is it still well-founded, or are there just, numerous other quarterbacks in the Big Ten who you think have more talent than him?
No, it's absolutely well-founded, because when he plays to his potential, you can make an argument. If you look at the quarterbacks that are gone now, right, with Justin Fields moving on, you look at the quarterbacks that are coming back, Peyton Ramsey, Northwestern, a guy who played 1 year with the Wildcats and put up good numbers. You look at the guys that were there, and now the guys who aren't going to be there. There are questions at quarterback, even places that have returning guys with a ton of talent, like Graham Mertz. He blew us away in week 1, right? But then there were all sorts of questions throughout the rest of the year, not just COVID-related. There are very few programs in the country who have a quarterback who stays for at least 3 years at that program is outstanding. And if you have that guy, you're Ohio State or you're Clemson or you're Alabama and you're in the national championship hunt. I mean, that is not a commonality. So if you want to compare Adrian talent-wise, potential-wise to the rest of the Big Ten, you could make an argument that heading into this year, could he be the best quarterback in the league? Why not? Mm-hmm. He could absolutely be the best quarterback in the league. Could he, if he shows as much inconsistency as he has over the past couple of years, could he be middle of the pack? Absolutely. And that, to me, is what makes Nebraska such a fascinating case study in Big Ten football and building with a new coach in year 4 and building to where you're trying to get to with the first full group of guys that are your guys in a division that, I'll be dead honest with you, fellas, I think is ripe for the taking this year. I think the Big Ten West is absolutely right. You want it, go out and get it.
Go play better football and take care of the football and be good on special teams. Take a step defensively and find an identity offensively. That's a long to-do list, but it's doable. Rick Pizzo's with us, Hail Varsity Radio, Big Ten Network. Rick, about a minute and a half here. Not as much time as we need for golf, but that's what we have. Your thought here on the Masters this weekend. Give me a win, give me a place, give me a show.
I mean, you'll get your usual suspects, right? I mean, I think Justin Johnson's the guy that's perfectly designed for the course. He showed it in November. Jordan Spieth, I should say, to have him back and playing well. I think Justin Thomas is a guy that obviously this course sets up well for him. If I'm going to give you a couple of dark horses, I really like the way that a lefty named Brian Harmon has been playing as of late. He's a guy who nobody talks about, but he loves Augusta. He gets around Augusta really well. People forget how well Sung Jae Im played last year. He's just in his second Masters, young guy out of Korea, but I think he is a phenomenal player, and I think he has a very good chance. But at the end of the day, man, it is really hard to pick against Dustin Johnson the way that he's playing. I know that a lot of folks say Bryson DeChambeau can overpower this golf course. I just until he shows me that at Augusta, I'm not ready to buy. I mean, I think the heavy money goes on DJ, but as always at Augusta, first couple of rounds, you'll see a couple of guys who are on the leaderboard and you're scratching your head saying, where did those guys come from? I think Brian Harmon, I think Matt Kuchar, a couple of guys that maybe make a little bit of a run that you don't expect.
Rick Pizzo with us, Big Ten Buffet, a little Masters thoughts. And Rick, enjoy wonderful weather in Chicago. Keep them clubs dusted off and go hit them far and straight and say hi to Otto again. Thanks for a few minutes with us.
The Hail Varsity Radio Saturday Morning Show, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Strap yourselves in. Here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt.
Y'all don't even know he was a virgin until he's 28, and now, roll tide.
And Mark Cranack.
Time has come for someone to put his foot down. And that foot is me.
Back with you, it's Hour 2. It's the weekend edition, Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Chris Schmidt, Damon, Barr. Mark Cranack is on assignment. We'll catch up with Cranack next week. And we kick things off with Brandon Vogel, managing editor, HailVarsity.com and magazine, and his book with John Cook, Dream Like a Champion. Vogues, good Saturday morning, man. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
We're okay. So where do you picture Cranack being when we say on assignment?
At the Masters.
Okay. Why not?
Hopefully. It's an easy ticket to get, right?
Oh, sure. And you know about Cranack's love affair with golf, clearly. So have you been able to sneak onto the luscious land of Augusta?
I have not. I have skirted around the city of Augusta on the interstate, and that is the extent of my personal history with the capital of U.S. golf.
Okay, yeah, I've had friends who've won the lottery in non-pandemic years and gotten to go, and it'd be awesome to check out someday, right? Someday we'll we'll do a Saturday morning show from Augusta because they allow that sort of thing. We'll dive into to how Cranack shot this weekend, next weekend when we're all back together. But an interesting week of football, Brandon, and week 2 of spring has come and gone, and the Kool-Aid video, as it's now known, was out, and over under before that video came out on how many profile shots of Omar Manning would be in that 3-minute clip.
Whatever the number was, and I would have set it pretty low, and I probably would have taken the under. We were kind of talking as a staff a little bit, and it would just I don't know if, and now granted, since we didn't get to see any practices in person in 2020, but we just haven't seen Omar Manning on a practice field very much for Nebraska. So when the news came Wednesday that he was out, even knowing that, I'm like, he probably just rolled an ankle and he'll be back tomorrow. Just given the history of not getting on the field, it did make me a little bit cautious. So, I think that was a pretty conscious choice to say, hey, look who's here. And good. It probably soothed the collective stress of Husker Nation a little bit going into the weekend.
He was waving, for God's sake, right? I mean, he was making a block downfield, and then he's waving, and then he's making some sweet grabs sliding to the ground. But no, he is a guy that, he has all the talent in the world, and Nebraska fans have visions of big plays in their head once you get Omar on, and you couple that with the rest of the receiving core that you think can be really pretty good. So it's not just, worry about Omar. I mean, you still got Betts. You've got Alante, who's got a season under his belt. Nixon's back from injury. Martin's nice. Wyatt's been doing some things. I really like the receiving core, and you pair that with the quarterback, which is where I'm going next. And you spent a lot of time with Mario Verduzco and had a really awesome feature, and even got to hang in Mario's office for one of your yearbook stories. And kind of take me through how you interpreted Mario's kind of candid comments, not only about the benching, but also on Adrian and the emotion attached to it. Because that's one thing I've kind of taken with me this week was early in the week, not only Adrian talking about where he needs to go and the turnover topic that it seems like everybody's hit on, but even his position coach when Mario met the media this week.
Yeah, there were two things with that. I guess with the benching, one, so clearly you see kind of the devotion and the attachment to Adrian. And I really do think Mario works to develop that with all his quarterbacks. It's not just like, this one's my favorite. But he's the one that was here from the very start. And I think for me, it was more an indication of what, a guy who's coached quarterbacks for a long, long time knows he can be. So I think that's where some of that emotion came out. Kind of talked about this a little bit during the Northwestern game. It was kind of a strange confluence of factors, particularly when you look back at it. I mean, you and I, Schmidt, were messaging about this after the Big Ten championship game. Mm. Adrian Martinez put up virtually identical numbers to Justin Fields against that same Northwestern defense, which was really, really salty and experienced, with one fewer interception. The problem was it was early in the season. Nebraska still had all of its hopes on the table. In fact, you were coming out of the Ohio State game feeling okay because you played well for a half. But then you just had an unforgivable interception. It was, all things considered, you could play that game exactly the way it played out. And if the circumstances are just different, it's probably not a benching, in my opinion. I look at last year, Adrian, from a numbers perspective, and it was probably his best year. I know what the freshman year was. I think that one benefits from circumstances a little bit too, where there were no expectations. We knew nothing of the guy. And he came out and was one of Nebraska's best players, and it kind of set the stage for all the rest of it. So that was one thing. On the turnover thing, when Verduzco said, just take care of the frickin' ball, I was kind of like, yeah, that kind of is it. And I was looking at it a little bit this week. His interception rate is below the national average. It's not drastically below. Like, he's not a guy who you're just like, oh, he doesn't throw interceptions. He's not Colt McCoy. But that's not the issue. The issue is the fumbles. He has 27 over his career. The next closest for any quarterback that's played all 3 seasons, which isn't a very big group, is 19. But here's the thing, like, those fumbles are having a major impact. Nebraska's 3-10 when Adrian Martinez loses a fumble. They're 8-7 when he doesn't. And what do you do with that? What do you do if you have a guy who's just a little bit fumble prone, instead of try to not put him in those positions? But they had to rely on the quarterback run game so much that they don't have much choice. We'll see if that can change.
You know, those are money stats, and I look at Adrian slimming down. I think he probably had to bulk up the last couple of years because he was going to be a focal point in the run game. What's our best offense running the football? Well, it was Adrian. Because and not that Mills didn't have good moments, but between the injury, right, and finally getting him the ball junior season against Wisconsin, Adrian had to bulk up a little bit to absorb some of that. And, you know, what's the judgment like with your quarterback? Is he a guy that is kind of Brett Favre-ish, the gunslinger mentality where, well, screw it, let's make something happen, right? And I don't think, I mean, Adrian's going to try and make something happen, but I think he goes into it, as you see him kind of roll out and extend plays that he's been so good at throughout his career. More times than not, he's dinged somebody for like a 40-yard gain, okay, as he's rolling against the grain to his left. And, oh, look at the touch on that pass. How did he find Mo Washington up the sideline against Wisconsin or Iowa, right? But what sticks with you is that one interception where he tried to do too much against Northwestern. You're ahead. I believe they were ahead in the game or they were tied, but it was Nebraska was in a better spot because they went to the locker room actually ahead, right, on the road against Northwestern, and then you come out, you're in the third quarter, and you have an interception, and it was one of those jump balls, and you were throwing it to one of your 18-foot tall tight ends. It was just way off. So it was an instance where he got caught up trying to do too much, and you had that McCaffrey situation where, yeah, there's somebody over his shoulder, and I think that added to the problem. I think you'll see caution with his decision-making this year and him maybe being able to play a bit freer. We got a lot of football left before we get to fall, obviously, but I look at Adrian, and I don't see him – I've never seen him as a reckless risk-taker at quarterback.
Yeah, it's such a fine line for football coaches, and you know it's been that way really since the quarterback position has moved out of kind of the primordial sludge of being a primary running back in the early days to then you went to almost pure drop back passers, and now you got guys that can do both. And how much do you limit that? Because it can be a
Vogues? Hello? Vogues, no. Start over, because that was going to be incredible, and he just dropped out.
No, sorry about that.
We left off at sludge.
Oh, yeah. So the primordial sludge of quarterbacks, you know, back in the single wing days where they basically were just your primary running back, to the days of the pure drop back passer, and now we're to a point where you've got guys that do both, and so how do you manage that? Because those type of guys extending plays and turning, how many times has Adrian turned what should have by all accounts been a sack into something good? So you have those, but occasionally those turn into, well, maybe you tried to do too much on that one. It's just finding that balance. Mario saying what he said about the about taking care of the football. Obviously got run for an entire week of spring ball. But even before that, he said the exact same thing in kind of the Adrian Martinez video that they put out the week before. So it's being stressed. It's one of those things, though, where you gotta see it to fully know that, something has happened. We used to be here, and now we're here.
I look at him. We're in Boulder, right? And I go back to that moment. It's halftime. Nebraska's drilling the Buffs. And what was it, third play of the game? Nebraska has the football with their possession. They get a 3-and-out defensively. What's Nebraska do? Like, Adrian's in the pocket, scrambles a bit, sets, and here's JD for 81 yards. I mean, that's just undefensible, right? And you've seen moments like that on top of how Adrian's been able to finish off a run. I mean, the highlight reel you can go catch on YouTube. Man, it's okay to be excited. You just hope that from a confidence standpoint and a health standpoint, it's going to be great for him this senior season, because between health and confidence, that's been a bit stormy here the last couple of seasons potentially. And also we go back to, freshman year Adrian versus what are we going to see senior year Adrian. I think there's a lot of weapons around him. Can those guys be ready, Vogues, for fall? Because if you got some options at receiver, you find a run game. I feel good about the O-line. I mean, I don't think the O-line's, I think it's going to be as good as it's ever been. This as young as they are, man, they look good. And yes, I'm overreacting to Rutgers. Forgive me, but they have the opportunity here to really make a jump offensively. We talk about the defense and feel good there, but if you take care of the football and you make a jump, you could be helping out each unit. There could be a sighting of complementary football here in this fall.
Yeah, I think they have, there's still a lot of unknowns for me on offense, but they feel, and they should be entering year 4, they feel maybe the most balanced that they've been across all of the positions. Like, we can look at the wide receivers and be like, there's not a lot that's proven there, but you've got, 3-4 guys that we can probably rattle off the top of our heads that you're at least intrigued by. Same with the running back room. Now, that's not always the best thing. It's great to have a running back coming back where you're just like, yep, that's the guy. But they don't. But I like the talent level, and so I think there is that. And this kind of, not to make this all about Adrian Martinez, but so much there's been so many times where, and I think this started in 2018 when it was kind of totally a free roll. He's felt like he's had to do a lot because other pieces of it weren't working. And whether that's true or whether that's just his perception, it's all the same because it still produces these occasional gaps. And quarterbacks are going to mess up, but a real key to that position is minimizing how often that happens.
Right, and that's so key. And Nebraska's not been clean enough in all 3 phases to overcome one position's mistake here or there. And that's kind of the drill down here this spring. Brandon Vogel's with us, managing editor, HailVarsity.com and magazine at Brandon L. Vogel. On Twitter is where you follow him. Vogel's going to switch gears to volleyball here. And everything okay now? I mean, volleyball, the NCAA, ESPN, they've all responded. And, hey, now we can watch and listen to the matches now on ESPN. They've come to their senses. There's adjustment by the NCAA. And, man, these storm clouds were really dark here about 48 hours ago here with social media reaction. Coaches felt frustrated. Bush League, I believe, was the term used by Purdue's coach towards the treatment of volleyball. And you love this sport. You cover it. You did a great book with a legendary coach in John Cook. And I don't think everything's okay, but it's better at least. Is that your feel here as we move forward for next week?
Yeah, I feel like the outcry has produced some results, certainly with ESPN, which, from their perspective, I could see it with just the setup on that first day. It's a logistical challenge, but it's not impossible, which is what we got to. The NCAA put out its statements kind of in response to this, and I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. I'll say some of that was probably true, that things weren't exactly as they were kind of reported or coming out on that Thursday. That said, revisit that day, and Coach Cook talked about what he was hearing. He talked about being on a phone call with the other coaches who were really concerned. We saw other coaches throughout the country as those tweets started to come out, kind of amplifying that. There was clearly multiple things that coaches were concerned about. So for the NCAA to come and say, yeah, none of this was actually part of the plan, they don't have the track record for me to buy that wholesale.
No, absolutely. Vogues, let's look ahead to Nebraska here, and another loaded Big Ten field here for the NCAA tournament. A little smaller field, obviously, but what's your outlook for just how deep Nebraska can go in this 2021 tournament? Nebraska's strengths, and a question or two you may have that could keep them from claiming another crown.
Yeah, the draw's not easy. There's not going to be any totally easy paths here in the volleyball tournament, but I'm assuming they'll play Texas State, Utah Valley winner. I'm guessing that'll be Texas State, which beat Baylor at the end of the year and has played 36 matches, which is the other kind of bizarre thing about this tournament is some of these teams have played a lot more volleyball than the others, and then Baylor, you've got the top two Big 12 teams in your side. Well, not just your side, your region. So they're going to have to be ready to go, which has been hit or miss at times during the season. We've seen Nebraska drop first sets to some good teams. We saw them drop one to Michigan, which was kind of middle of the road. Can they be ready to go? How does this non-conventional setup affect not just Nebraska, but all of these teams? The good things in their favor. Lawrence Stivrins is one of the best players in the tournament. You have that kind of go-to person. It's not an outside hitter. Like a lot of teams have. But Wisconsin's go-to person is an outside hitter either. So that's good. I think a lot of it comes down to how well does Lexi Sun play as that outside hitter who you go to quite often. If she's playing at the Big Ten Player of the Week level that she did for 2 straight weeks, Nebraska has a chance to go pretty deep. I think they make it all the way to the regional final where they will probably have a showdown with Texas. And we know with those two programs, the history that they share.
Just beat Texas, right? It's everyone's thought bubble. Beat Texas and keep on rocking. Vogues, what else you got going this weekend? What's coming up on Hail Varsity?
Yeah, so we'll keep looking at. We've got some good stuff. Some additional stories from spring football. One coming from Derek on Samari Toure. In just about 45 minutes or so. People should check out. Good to kind of week recap. Greg's got a nice story coming tomorrow about kind of recruiting. It's a weird time where visits aren't officially allowed, but kids are actually trying to get to campus. So that'll be a good table setter for the weeks ahead, leading up to spring game. And of course, Jacob will be our point man on all volleyball coverage throughout the next week. Me personally, I'm going to be doing. I'm going to write hopefully 4 or 5 team previews for the yearbook because it's getting to be about that time.
Man, I can't wait. Love your previews and man, what a schedule to break down. Brandon Vogel's with us. Vogues, have a good weekend. Thanks for the time today.
You too. Thanks a lot.
All right. There he is, Brandon Vogel, HailVarsity.com and magazine. Weekend edition. We roll forward, and it's time to say hi to the Iron Horse. Gary Sharp is with us next on Hail Varsity, presented by the Nebraska Lottery.
Now back with Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery, with Chris Schmidt and Mark Cranack.
Back with you. It's the weekend edition, Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. I am smiling because, well, it's gray and a little cloudy. There is sunshine peeking through. I need no more rain this weekend. We welcome in the Iron Horse, Gary Sharp, with us. Sharpie, good to spend some time with you. How you doing this morning?
I'm doing well, Schmidt. How are you?
I'm good, man. We get youth baseball kicked off tomorrow as the Monkey has a doubleheader, and I'm excited for it, man. Long time coming, you know?
Well, it's that time of the year. I kicked off my run of 4,000 AAU basketball games yesterday.
Yeah, okay, so that's awesome, and we all know the talent level around the region. What'd you check out, or did you just kind of go be a fan? Didn't matter, you just watched ball?
No, I have a particular interest that's playing on a 17 and team. So, yes, I'm. As you can tell, I'm elated to spend April, May, June, July, August in gyms around the country watching AAU basketball. But the level of 15, 16, 17-year-olds across the state is pretty good.
It is, and it's good ball. That's outstanding. So. We got great news this week with the Nebraska fan base. They will, 4,000 anyway, weather permitting, a week from today, we'll be able to go watch an open practice, about 2.5 hours. I was working in the morning, so I did not get down to see the first 30 minutes on Wednesday, but plenty of footage was out there, and that was really cool. And so if you and I are going next Saturday, what are we packing in the cooler? Because you can bring snacks. We can't buy a hot dog or a runza or a slice of pie, but you can maybe bring in a snack or two, which is cool. I mean, we've all heard the legendary stories of folks smuggling things into Memorial Stadium. Now you actually get to bring something.
Yeah, I don't know what's going to be different from like a normal fall Saturday in Lincoln where people sneak food in. It'd be like going to a NASCAR event. Yeah. Where you will, you bring a cooler in and maybe it has wheels on it. Mm-hmm. I actually, you know what? It's a great idea by Nebraska. Mm-hmm. We want as much content as possible during the spring, and we try not to overreact. But I have to say this: kudos to Nebraska. They've had a lot of access for media, whether to in-person interviews with coaches or players, or the 30 minutes the other day to watch it. But I think this is a great thing for their fans. I mean, they understand how much their fans missed being in Memorial Stadium last year. To have an open spring practice, some people make some sweeping generalizations and overreactions, but it's a great, olive branch to the fans ahead of the spring game in a couple of weeks. So I thought it was a great idea, and I think it'll be a lot of fun next weekend.
What are you trying to be cautious about and not overreact about? We see the videos. That's the snippet we get between yesterday or the topic of Gabe Ervin and how mature he's been and the opportunity he's getting, or the Marquis Step news. Have you been able to pump the brakes on things and not go too overboard? I know you don't, but what are you really interested in as we move forward? Because when I look at it, like I'm anxious to see, a healthy, locked-in Adrian, right, and go forward. I want to see Omar Manning make big plays. I want to see the run game find a couple of guys that can hammer the ball, and you see some good. You don't want to overextend on it, though. You gotta be cautious still.
Well, I think defense should be what it is. They're a veteran defense. Guys know what they're doing, so they can fly around a little bit more. On that side of the ball, you're just trying to build some depth and to have guys kind of find their role, either first or second team. I think on offense, that's where a lot of us are watching. And is Nebraska's concerted effort to throw the ball downfield, is it real, or is this just something they're working on in the spring? And I think it's important. You've seen any video you've seen. There have been a lot of throws downfield. Martinez has a throw to Betts on Wednesday that a lot of people are like, oh, okay, I like this. But I think it's important. I mean, this is the year of Adrian, to watch to see how he throws the ball. When you get past 10 yards down the field, is he completing it? What is Torrey and Manning and Betts, what can they do for you? So I think a lot of people will be focused on the offense, because that, of course, is where the biggest questions on this team is. And really, probably at the end of the day, where this team is going, I think the defense will be really good and continue to make improvements, but the offense is going to have to find a way to win some football games this year.
That they will, and you need that bubble between 17 and 30, right, for point totals in the Big Ten. It doesn't happen a lot unless it's a blowout against an opponent, but the Big Ten still pretty salty defensively when you think of the Northwesterns and Iowas, and I know Northwestern's got to reload a bit, but you're just not going to turn it into a track meet. Gary Sharp's with us, Hail Varsity Radio Weekend Edition, and your reaction to the Step news, as you know, what were you kind of banking on him to be, and how big is it in your opinion that he's not going to be physically doing much this spring?
Well, I think it's a big deal. And I think anytime you're dealing with somebody that has a history of injuries and a foot injury for a running back, it's a big deal. You can't overlook that it's a big deal. Now, I hope that they diagnosed it early enough, and Nebraska, unlike USC, has taken care of this injury, and he'll be back back in the mix in the middle of the summer, and he'll be good to go for fall camp. But it's an area of concern. He has battled some injuries. When he's been healthy, he's been good, but he doesn't do you any good if he's sitting on the sidelines, and he's a guy that is supposed to get into the mix to be one of your number one running backs. And, you kind of want him with that experience. But what it does, and so don't focus on the negative here, but again, I think people need to be concerned and watch that as the next couple of months unfold. It does open the door for a guy like Gabe Ervin, who shows up and is early on campus and can get right into the mix and can get a ton of reps, because it appears that running back room is kind of banged up right now early on in spring, which is not a good thing because you don't know very much about anybody in that room. So for a young freshman to show up and kind of, I looked at him from his size as a Mikhail Wilbon type size. Brian Christopherson had a great comp. Brandon Jackson, just the way he runs. I think he's somebody I like coming out of high school. I think he's got a great opportunity here to get into the mix because Marquise Stepp is not involved. But I wonder about the rest of the room. Who's going to get up and who's going to be consistently good? Who's going to be on the field for you? And where did Ramir Johnson go? I'm concerned about the running backs. Outside of Gabe Ervin, I'm wondering where those guys are going and who can stay on the field.
I love, anytime I hear Brandon Jackson, that makes me smile, because that dude was a second-round pick, had a nice career. And was he so good at the one cut and then just go in the Callahan era in that Big 12 West team? Gary Sharp's with us. As we look at the running backs here, Sharpie, to your knowledge, what is something that's holding a guy like Tompkins back? What's holding a guy like Morrison back? Johnson, Ramir's been here 3 years, and you saw him against Iowa, and then of course you had Marvin Scott as well. Give me a pro and not a con, but just a reason that maybe their progress has been delayed.
Well, I think Tompkins and Morrison just getting on the field, whether it be for injuries or COVID, they just need to get on the football field so we can see what they're like. Marvin Scott is on the field, and Marvin Scott has gotten opportunities, and he'll be in the mix. The one guy that is kind of a mystery to me is Ramir Johnson. We've seen glimpses. You go back to his freshman year where they preserved his redshirt season, and that game against Maryland where he was able to show off that great speed we fell in love with him coming out of high school from New Jersey. And then last year you were waiting for him as Mills was trying to figure out his way and what his role was. And, Nebraska didn't do a good job to the running backs of being committed to the running game from that position because it was basically quarterbacks or Wandale Robinson running the football. But I go back to the Iowa game. You remember the first drive against Iowa for Nebraska in the second half where Nebraska scored? There were some nice plays by Ramir Johnson in there, and Johnson scored the touchdown. And I'm thinking, here we go. Ramir Johnson has arrived, and then he hardly ever carried the ball the rest of the season. And the knock has been on Ramirez. He's got to get in the playbook. He's got to know the plays before we trust him out there. Well, it's kind of go time for him because you're going now into your third season. You've got to know the playbook to get on the field because I like him. I think he's got great speed. I think his body has gotten a little bit bigger. But where is his role? Whatever happens through spring football, I don't think all of those guys stick around after the pecking order is established after the spring. There's just not enough footballs to go around. But I don't think also Nebraska hasn't found just number one running back. We're always looking for that co-1, 2, and 3. I don't know that Nebraska has a number one guy, and that's something that has hurt that position over the last couple of years. Since Ozigbo was here, that seems like a long time ago that Devine was here and ran for over 1,000 yards. Now, some poor recruiting misses have hurt that position as well. But it's go time for that position, and Ryan Held, let you know what a sense of urgency there is.
Does that blow you away that we're talking about Nebraska football, and it's not the power I option offense anymore? That said, Nebraska should never have. Are you of the belief Nebraska should never have a problem recruiting a number one guy, a dude in that room?
Well, it's a position that has some great history at Nebraska. I mean, it has a Heisman Trophy winner. It should be a position, and it's had a really good run of solid running backs that have gone on to NFL careers.
Mm-hmm.
You look at Halu, you look at Burkhead, you look at Amir, but it just hasn't happened. Now, Greg Bell and Mo Washington were supposed to take care of that. They're no longer here. I think also when Nebraska's idea of what they want to do in the run game is how committed they are to it. Do they trust the offensive line? Do they trust the running backs to run the right way, find the right hole, run in the scheme? It's a lot of trust that's involved, but at some point Nebraska has to rely on running the football with running backs and running the football when they need to run the football and having success. We'd love to have the Rutgers game plan all the time, and maybe that's possible because that offensive line is essentially going to be the same offensive line this year. But in that game, you made a commitment to running the football, first with the running back, if need be with Martinez. If that's the case, if you commit to running it out of the running back position, then I think we'll see that position start to settle down. But there's some guys that have to step up in that room and take the load and run with it. I think Gabe Irvin's got a great opportunity with more reps this spring. We'll see who follows.
Sharpie, when we talk about that commitment, it's easy to talk about and say, man, just run the ball. I get it. I'm with you on that. But if you're game planning or you're putting and providing input because you've been there every day at practice as a coach and a coordinator, what you want to do and what you're able to do are two different things. You feel good about the O-line. You feel good about finding a couple of guys in the running room, and you pair that together. Maybe you move forward with it. What do you think's been the trust issue? Has it been more O-line, or has it been more of the running back room as far as the hesitancy to just dial and go all in a la Rutgers? What do you think was the pause?
I think it's been a little bit the offensive line. Is the offensive line going to get you a 5-yard push? Are they going to hit the right block so this isn't going to blow up? And then it's who's the running back? When Dedrick Mills was healthy, Dedrick Mills was pretty good, but Dedrick Mills wasn't always in the backfield. So I think it's a laundry list of things that have plagued Nebraska in just running the football. I love the quarterback power run game that we saw at times last year with Martinez. I think the running game will change this year, and I think a couple of things do this. I think how the offensive philosophy, Schmidt, changes a little bit because the defense is going to be a strength, and you're not going to have to score, because I think the defense will do well enough to keep games low scoring. But you don't have to go and score 45 every single game or have that sense of urgency when you're out there playing on offense or you're calling. I think the offensive line will be better. They have, they're changing a little bit of how they block up front in their zone scheme. And then I think the running backs will be different as well. Plus, you also have to consider your backup to Adrian Martinez right now is
exactly
guys that haven't played. So are you going to put him in harm's way and have him run the football as much as he's run last year and the year before? I don't think so. So it just adds a little bit more to need the running backs to be good. Running backs read their holes, get there, run north-south, run east-west, and then make a commitment as a whole to run the football and be able to run the football when you need to run the football or want to run the football.
Gary Sharp's with us. Couple more minutes. Hail Varsity Radio Weekend Edition. Sharpie, let's get over to Haymarket and talk Nebraska baseball. Another big-time win for Will Bolt's crew. Povich really solid last night. The offense very diverse and timely as always. And, I love listening to Will Bolt and him just kind of shoot it straight. And I love his thoughts earlier in the week. Hey, we knew we had talent in the room. They got a lot of confidence, and they're feeling it, man. 9 out of their last 10. And Maryland's a talented team. Their record's, a game or two below 500. But, what were you? I guess, are you surprised that Nebraska's where they're at, knowing baseball like you do? Are you surprised they're leading the league?
Nope. Well, maybe leading the league, and they've now got a game and a half lead. I thought this team would be really good because I like the diversity of their lineup. I think Will has done a really good job of constructing this roster and then constructing his lineup on the different things that they can do. They can play small ball. They can hit to the gap. They can run the bases. They can hit home runs. They do a lot of things that make it tough on pitchers in the Big Ten. And I like this team. I think anybody that is on the fence or has not gotten into Nebraska baseball, this is your time. This is a really, really good baseball team that has got a nice front-end starter in Cade Povich, who continues to go out and give you a chance every Friday. And then you got Schwellenbach, who is on the back end, and you've been able to piece your bullpen together. They're also finding ways. When you go back to the series last weekend in Champaign, they found different ways to win that game. And the other thing about this team is you can look at this team, and if you know Will Bolt, you're like, that's a Will Bolt team. They never back down, and they're never out of a game. You might be down 5-0, but before you know it, they've scored 6 runs, and they're right back in the game. This is a fun team. They're very likable. And I think as we get through the season and they get the competition becomes stiffer, and I think Maryland's the stiffest competition so far, you will see that Nebraska baseball will start to have that buzz again. And it's okay to jump on the bandwagon because I think they're really, really good.
Does this team remind you of past teams you've covered?
Well, maybe. It's tough to judge because you're playing only in the Big Ten, so you don't have that 3 or 4 week stretch of weekends where you get to see them play against some of the best non-con. But I think they're a really good baseball team. I think they do a lot of things well, and I think they do things well enough that they're going to continue to have success throughout the season. And then I think that will give them a chance when they get to the NCAA. And keep in mind, I don't think you're going to see a team out of the Big Ten rise up to be a number 1 seed. But there's no doubt if Nebraska is sitting at the top of the Big Ten at the end of May, they could be a number 2 seed. And the way the NCAA is doing regionals and super regionals where they're fixed sites this year, Nebraska's going to put in a bid. It's due on Monday. Nebraska's bid will be aggressive. The Nebraska could, as a number 2 seed, be hosting in the at the end of May, which would be like, oh, man, here we go. It's old times again.
That'd be so good. As you've seen some of the projections, where are those projections for Nebraska? Are they somewhere between a 2 or a 3?
Well, they are a 2 or a 3. Baseball America, D1 Baseball are the 2 major publications, and they both have them going to the same spot, and that's down to Fayetteville, Arkansas, to see the old Husker coach, Dave Van Horn. Yeah, and Arkansas is really, really good. Dave's got a team that could get back to Omaha and be right in the mix for another national championship. So you would like to avoid that. But I would be very curious to see what the NCAA does when they get to the middle of May and they announce what the regional sites are going to be, because it's going to be on merit, how they do it, if they'll just be pretty obvious on the top 16 at the time, or if a place like Nebraska, even though Nebraska wouldn't be a number 1 seed, would still get the ability to host at Haymarket Park.
Elijah is on assignment this weekend down at Arkansas Ole Miss, so I hope he's got plenty of aspirin with him after a Friday night there down there at Ole Miss. Sharpie, you have a great weekend, man. Enjoy the hoops and enjoy the baseball. Thanks for jumping in with us today.
Hey, enjoy the Masters as well.
You too, bud. Take care. Gary Sharp with us, the Iron Horse Hail Varsity Radio Weekend Edition. You missed the show. Please check us out. Give us a review. Tell us what you think, and can do so 3 different platforms to find us on the podcast side of things. iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, and interviews are posted. A couple of different spots, ESPNLincoln.com, and also that on-demand section with ESPNLincoln.com, also on Twitter at ESPN Lincoln. Give that a follow. Give Hail Varsity a follow. And can find Damon on Twitter, Damon Barr, producer extraordinaire, at Damon Barr. That's 2 R's, at Schmidt_radios, where you follow me, at Mark Skurs for Mark Kranak, who will be back this weekend. Damon, what is on the agenda today?
Well, first of all, heading over to family, see them. Haven't seen them in a couple weeks, actually. I was gone for Easter. So heading to the parents' house, checking in with them, helping my sister move apartment back home. She's moving back
so you're
home,
moving.
so
you're moving.
I'm moving her, and then
you're moving.
I move a month later. We're just getting ready, but definitely starting that process. So it's going to be a long day of hauling furniture for myself,
dude. I mean, do you have that friend you can go to, kind of like the Seinfeld episode where Keith Hernandez was tapped by Jerry or vice versa, and Jerry had to help Keith Hernandez move, right? Do you have that buddy you can call up? I remember moving into the dorms my freshman year, and I had a buddy named Reggie who smoked Marlboro Reds, and we had to take the stairs 6 floors. I was in way better shape then, so it didn't hurt me, but he about threw me out the window because let's just say the stamina wasn't what it needed to be because he had 70-year-old lungs.
Well, unfortunately, I'm the friend with the truck, so it's kind of reversed on me. I'm that friend, so that's the role I play. It's just whoever I can scrounge up to say, hey, pop in the car, we're driving across town, but yeah, it's usually me on the receiving end of that phone call.
I absolutely despise moving, and I will budget to pay someone to do it.
Yeah.
I'm pinky in the air a-hole. Yes, I am. I'm sorry. But I hate it. I hate moving. There's been wars started in the Schmidt household because of trying to navigate stairs and, you're scratching the wall, or don't you hit the weight room. I mean, just all the smack talk my wife gives me. It's been horrific. So every time we've moved, like, that's going to cost an arm and a leg, but oh well. It keeps us from being at each other's throat.
Hey, I don't blame you.
So, well, good enough. Plenty of Masters updates throughout the weekend, and we will be back Monday on Hail Varsity Radio, 4 o'clock. Plenty of recruiting thoughts, some reaction to Nebraska Baseball's weekend series. Looking forward to the NFL draft, and yes, more spring ball. Back at you on Monday with Hail Varsity. Have a great weekend. We're presented by the Nebraska Lottery.